How to master a bad temper, a Stoic approach to anger. Have you ever said something in anger, only to regret it before the words even finished leaving your lips? Do you find yourself losing control over the smallest things, like a slow driver or an unexpected comment? And more importantly, do you ever wonder what kind of peace you could feel if you finally learned to master your temper instead of being mastered by it? Welcome to Stoic Zen, the place where ancient wisdom meets everyday struggles. Today, we begin the journey of transforming your anger, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by understanding it so deeply that it no longer controls you. This is not a quick fix, it's a quiet transformation. And it starts now. Tip 1. Identify your anger triggers. The first step toward liberation. Anger doesn't come from nowhere. It may arrive suddenly, but it's never truly random. Behind every angry outburst is a pattern, a trigger, a wound, an expectation unmet. And the Stoics knew this deeply. Before you can control your anger, you must first understand it. Imagine anger as a messenger, not an enemy. When it flares, it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to tell you something. Maybe it's a fear you haven't faced. Maybe it's a belief you've never questioned. Maybe it's a value you hold being quietly violated. Whatever it is, if you keep ignoring the signal, the volume only gets louder. That's how frustration turns into rage, and rage into regret. Epictetus once said, "It is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgment about them." In other words, the world does not make us angry. We make ourselves angry. Through expectations, through assumptions, through the stories we attach to what happens. You're not angry because someone cut you off in traffic. You're angry because you believe people should be more considerate. You're not angry because your partner forgot something. You're angry because you expected them to read your mind. And you're not wrong for having standards. But if your peace depends on the behavior of others, you've already handed them the keys to your inner world. So take them back. Start by watching yourself. Keep a quiet mental journal. When does your temper flare? Is it certain people? Certain times of day? Situations that make you feel unheard, unseen, disrespected? Don't judge what you find. Just notice. Bring awareness to it. Because once you understand the patterns, you can begin to reshape them. Take, for example, a father who lashes out when his child forgets to do homework. Is it about the homework, or is it fear about the child's future? When you dig deeper, anger becomes less about power and more about pain. And pain, when understood, can become purpose. Anger is not weakness, but reacting blindly is. The Stoics didn't ask us to suppress our anger. They asked us to examine it, sit with it, question it, and in doing so, disarm it. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be honest. Tip 2. Recognize anger early. Catch the spark before it becomes fire. You don't wake up furious. No one goes from zero to rage in a breath. Anger is a buildup, a slow, quiet boil beneath the surface. And if you learn to recognize it early, you don't have to let it own you. This is the gift of early awareness. The Stoics taught that emotions aren't the problem. Unchecked emotions are. Like a match, anger is small and manageable at first, but if left unattended, it can light up everything. Your words, your relationships, your dignity, in a single careless moment. Have you ever felt that subtle clench in your jaw? That tightening in your chest? That voice in your head starting to replay the insult over and over again? That's the beginning. That's the moment to intervene, to pause, to breathe. Because in that early window, you still have a choice. Imagine you're in the middle of work. You're focused, flowing, and someone interrupts you with something trivial. That little flicker of irritation, that's your moment. Not when you raise your voice, not when you storm out, but right there, in that tiny shift. That's your chance to practice mastery. Ask yourself, what's really happening? Am I tired? Am I feeling disrespected? Or am I simply caught in the illusion that everything must go my way? Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that's exactly what anger often is. A drama created by the mind, where we're both actor and director, playing scenes of insult, revenge, and righteousness that never actually help us heal. And what's even more powerful than catching thoughts? Listening to your body. Because your body always speaks before your mouth does. Your shoulders tense, your breathing shortens, your voice tightens. Those are signals. Learn to hear them. Learn to pause. One of the most life-changing skills you can practice is this. Don't wait until you're yelling to realize you're angry. Notice the shift when it's still silent. That's when you still have all your power. And if you think this sounds too simple to matter, try it. Watch how often you can change your reaction simply by catching the emotion in its earliest form. That pause, that breath, that's not avoidance. That's Stoic discipline in action. True strength isn't loud, it's quiet. And it begins the moment you decide not to be ruled by a passing wave of emotion. Tip 3. Breathe before the storm. Mastering relaxation in moments of anger. We often wait too long. We wait until we're boiling, until we're on the verge of exploding before we ask ourselves to calm down. But by that point, it's too late. Anger has already seized the wheel. Words are already forming. Muscles already clenched. The storm is here. But what if you didn't wait? What if instead you built in rituals of calm, practices that trained your nervous system to soften before the tension even arrived? This is the heart of relaxation in the Stoic sense. Not bubble baths or vacations, but breath, space, stillness. The discipline to choose a slower pace in the very moment the world is speeding you up. It starts with something deceptively simple. Your breath. When anger hits, your breath shortens, your chest tightens, your body shifts into fight or flight, even if there's nothing to fight but a comment or a tone of voice. And here's where the magic happens. When you take a long, intentional breath, you're not just inhaling air, you're buying back control. You're creating space between stimulus and response. And in that space, freedom lives. Try this. The next time someone says something that triggers you, don't respond. Not immediately. Take one deep breath. In through your nose. Hold for 2 seconds, then slowly release. That pause is your shield. That breath is your boundary. It's not weakness. It's wisdom in motion. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And the fastest way to shift that estimate is to slow your breath." You can also speak to yourself, quietly, reassuringly. "This is not worth my peace. This feeling will pass. I am in control of how I respond. These aren't cliches. These are affirmations of sovereignty. You are reminding yourself, I am not here to react. I am here to act with reason. In the chaos of life, the ability to breathe deeply is a form of spiritual rebellion. It's saying, I choose not to let this world harden me. I choose clarity. And sometimes, that choice begins with nothing more than a slow, conscious exhale. Tip 4. Guard your tongue, because words cannot be retrieved. The Stoics taught that anger is most dangerous when it finds a voice, because words once spoken cannot be pulled back. You can't unsay pain. You can't rewind the moment where your tone turned sharp and your truth became a weapon. That's why one of the greatest practices in Stoic living is simple but profound. Think before you speak. Sounds obvious, but in the heat of emotion, it's one of the hardest things to do, because the ego wants to strike. The wounded part of you wants to be heard, even if what you say leaves a scar. Epictetus reminded us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. That's not just advice on communication, it's a philosophy of restraint. Think of your words like arrows. Are you shooting blindly, or are you setting them down with intention? Imagine you've had a long day. You come home to a messy room, or a child who didn't listen, or a partner who seems distracted. That first instinct, to snap, to scold, to express your frustration, feels like release. But it's not healing. It's harm disguised as honesty. So what do you do instead? You pause, you breathe, you ask, will these words help or will they hurt? You ask, am I speaking from truth or from tension? You ask, is this who I want to be? And if you're unsure, say nothing. Silence is not surrender. It's space, it's the room wisdom needs to arrive. Over time, this practice becomes natural. You start catching yourself in mid-sentence. You soften your tone. You revise your sentence before it ever becomes sound. And what you'll notice is this. Your relationships start to feel safer. You start to trust yourself more. And you speak less, but say more. Because the words that come from calm carry weight. They land differently. They're remembered differently. And most importantly, they build instead of break. Let your words be tools of peace, not grenades of emotion. Think, breathe, speak like the person you are trying to become, not the version of you that anger tries to unleash. Tip 5. Move the body, calm the mind, turning anger into energy. When emotions build and pressure rises, it's tempting to look for quick escapes. Scrolling endlessly, numbing out, lashing out. But one of the most overlooked, most ancient remedies for agitation is motion. The Stoics understood this long before science ever confirmed it, that the body and the mind are not separate. What moves one, moves the other. So when your mind is restless, get your body involved. Exercise isn't just about fitness, it's about flow. When you move with purpose, walking, running, lifting, stretching, you're releasing emotional tension from your body before it becomes toxic. You're converting inner chaos into physical momentum. You're proving to yourself that you are not stuck, that your energy has direction. Picture this: a day full of frustration, deadlines unmet, people interrupting, everything out of sync. Your mind is boiling, but instead of letting that fire spill out into someone's inbox or a bitter conversation, you step outside, you move, your breath deepens, your steps get stronger, and slowly, the weight lifts. Not because the problems are gone, but because you've reclaimed the capacity to face them. There's a sacred power in sweating your emotions out instead of speaking them in rage. There's wisdom in exhausting your frustration through movement, not through conflict. Every drop of sweat becomes a quiet reminder: I am in charge. I choose where this energy goes. Stoicism teaches us to transform what we cannot avoid, and you cannot avoid tension, but you can direct it. Let your body become the place where anger is digested, not displayed. Let movement remind you of your strength, not your rage. You don't need a gym, you just need space. 5 minutes, a walk, a stretch. A conscious decision not to stay frozen in your frustration. Because when you move with purpose, your mind follows. And suddenly, you're no longer reacting, you're resetting. Tip 6. Address it early. Don't let anger accumulate in the shadows. There's a silent danger in ignoring what bothers you. A comment that cuts a little too deep, a promise broken, a boundary crossed. You tell yourself it's fine. You don't want conflict. You'll deal with it later. But you don't. And day by day, the small becomes significant. The irritation becomes resentment. The silence becomes a scream, just waiting for a crack to explode through. Stoicism doesn't encourage avoidance. It invites clarity. And clarity comes from courage. The courage to address things while they're small, instead of waiting until they consume you. Think of your emotions like a pot of water on the stove. If you don't lower the heat or take off the lid, eventually it boils over. That's what happens when we let anger sit unspoken, unresolved, unexamined. It doesn't disappear. It waits. And then it erupts at the wrong time, in the wrong place, toward the wrong person. But what if instead you addressed it early? Imagine a coworker said something that made you feel disrespected. You could let it slide and let it build, or you could say, "Hey, something about that didn't sit right with me. Can we talk about it?" That conversation doesn't have to be perfect, but it's honest, it's preventative, it's grounded. The Stoics remind us, what injures the hive injures the bee, meaning, when there's a fracture in your peace, it will affect every part of you. Your sleep, your tone, your patience, your presence. So tending to it early isn't selfish, it's responsible. The goal is not to chase confrontation. The goal is to chase peace. And peace comes not from ignoring problems, but from dealing with them while your voice is still steady and your heart is still soft. So next time something unsettles you, ask, do I need to say something now? Not to blame, but to clarify. Ask, will silence serve me here, or is it just fear wearing a mask? Ask, what would the future me thank me for doing today? Because a small act of courage now can prevent a large regret later. And that's Stoic mastery, not avoiding, emotion, but understanding its message and choosing the wisest response before it's too late. Tip 7. Lighten the weight. The Stoic power of humor. When was the last time you chose to laugh instead of lash out? In the middle of tension, in the heat of frustration, we often forget that one of the most powerful tools for disarming anger isn't force, it's levity. A small moment of humor, a shift in perspective that says, maybe this isn't the end of the world after all. Humor, when used wisely, isn't a way to dismiss what matters. It's a way to soften the edges. It's the gentle art of stepping outside of yourself, seeing the absurdity in the moment, and remembering that not every inconvenience deserves a war. The Stoics weren't comedians, but they weren't humorless either. They understood that seriousness without grace becomes rigidity, and rigidity breaks. What stays flexible stays resilient. Imagine a heated family debate over something trivial, like who left the fridge door open or who didn't take out the trash. Voices rise, tempers flare. You could match that intensity, or you could pause, take a breath, and say, clearly we're all very passionate about refrigeration. That small laugh changes the room. That lightness resets the energy, but it only works if it comes from love. Real humor is never cruel. It uplifts. It reminds. It says, we're human. And sometimes, being human is hilariously imperfect. You can even keep the humor to yourself. Stuck in traffic? Instead of cursing, the universe smile and say silently, ah yes, another Stoic test. Level 87, patience behind the wheel. That small internal joke can ease your grip on the steering wheel and on life. Humor is not a distraction. It's clarity in disguise, a reminder that we're all stumbling through this together. And if we can laugh, not to escape but to reconnect, we unlock a deeper kind of strength. One that diffuses instead of divides. One that lifts instead of burns. So next time your anger begins to rise, ask yourself, is this heavy? Or am I holding it too tightly? Maybe all it takes is a smile to remember how light you truly are. Tip 8. Step back. Find power in the pause. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is nothing. When anger swells, the instinct is to strike, with words, with blame, with judgment. But true strength is not in the explosion. It's in the pause, in the deliberate choice to not react. The Stoics spoke often about space, not physical but mental space, that tiny gap between what happens and what you choose to do next. And in that gap is your freedom. You are not your anger. You are the witness of it. You can observe it, name it, and still not obey it. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your chest tightens, your heart rate spikes. You feel that urge to yell, to honk, to express your frustration. But instead, you inhale, hold for a moment, and exhale the emotion. You just chose not to be owned by a stranger's moment. You just practiced mastery. Epictetus taught, when offended by another, turn to yourself and examine your own failings. Not because you are wrong, but because the wisest course often begins with humility. When you step back, literally or metaphorically, you're not retreating. You're regrouping. You're choosing clarity over chaos. You can walk away from an argument to come back with grace. You can postpone a conversation to preserve its purpose. You can say, "Let me take a moment," and that moment can save a relationship, a reputation, a regret. Stepping back isn't weak, it's tactical. It gives you time to see the full picture, to ask, is this truly worth my energy? Is this anger hiding hurt, fear, or pride? Is this the response my higher self would choose? Sometimes the only way to gain perspective is to physically shift yours. Go outside, breathe fresh air, journal, reflect. Let the emotions settle before making a decision. Because the version of you that breathes is always wiser than the version of you that explodes. And when you return to the room, to the conversation, to yourself, you come back anchored, not agitated. A grounded presence in a reactive world. The fire will come, the world will test you, but you don't have to be consumed. Step back. Observe. Then choose. Calmly, clearly, consciously. That is what it means to respond, not react. Tip 9. Ask for help. Because strength isn't always silent. There's a myth we've been taught that if you're strong, you should be able to handle everything on your own. That asking for help means weakness. But the Stoics would tell you otherwise. True strength, they believed, is knowing when to stand tall and when to lean gently on another. Anger becomes most dangerous when it isolates us, when it builds in the dark corners of our mind unspoken and unshared. We try to manage it alone. We tell ourselves we should be able to get over it. But healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in connection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." In other words, we are not meant to live or struggle in solitude. We are part of something larger. And asking for help is not weakness. It is wisdom in action. Maybe you need to talk to a friend. Maybe you need professional guidance. Maybe you just need to admit, out loud, that this anger is more than you can carry alone. That simple act opens a door. It gives your anger air, space, light. It turns shame into strength. And often, in sharing your burden, you find not only support, but insight. A perspective you couldn't see from the inside. A reminder that others have stood where you are and made it through. You're not a failure for needing help. You're human. And being human means sometimes we forget how to breathe. And need someone to sit with us while we remember. So if the weight feels too much, don't just clench your jaw and try to survive it. Reach, speak, trust. Because a strong man lifts himself, but a wise man lets others lift with him. Tip 10. Stay anchored. Let your core values be the rudder in the storm of anger. It's easy to lose yourself, to forget who you are, to say things you don't mean, to become someone you barely recognize. But the Stoics believed that in every moment of chaos there is a compass waiting inside you, your core values. Values are not just lofty ideas. They are your foundation. They are what remain when emotion fades. They are the quiet voice that says, even now, I know what's right. So when anger rises, ask yourself, what do I stand for? What kind of person do I want to be, even under pressure? Marcus Aurelius gave us a standard. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. This is not about being perfect. It's about being honest. With yourself, with others, with your principles. Let your values be your pause. Let them be your filter. Let them catch the words before they leave your mouth, the thoughts before they poison your peace. Because the more you practice living in alignment with your values, the more unshakable you become. You don't have to be unfeeling. You just have to be unmoved by what doesn't align with your truth. When you stay true to your values, even when it's hard, even when you're angry, you build a version of yourself that commands respect without demanding it. That speaks without yelling. That holds boundaries without punishment. That is not weakness. That is grace. That is Stoic integrity in its purest form. Conclusion. Let this be the start of something quietly powerful. Anger is not your enemy. It is a messenger, pointing you towards something that needs attention, healing, or action. But you always have a choice: to react blindly or to respond with awareness. Through these 10 Stoic practices, you've now seen that anger doesn't need to be suppressed or feared. It needs to be understood. It needs to be observed. And above all, it needs to be met with strength, the kind that is calm, steady, and anchored in principle. So the next time anger rises, and it will, remember, breathe, pause, reflect. Choose, not because it's easy, but because you've trained for this. And if you found this message grounding, if it helped you reclaim even a moment of inner space, I invite you to subscribe to Stoic Zen. This isn't just a channel, it's a space to return to, a place to remember who you are when the world makes you forget. Until next time, stay calm, stay centered, stay true,